The alarm on the sparring deck had barely faded when Tragar shoved me backward with one massive hand, and the whole room went silent, waiting to see what I would do. My name is Daniel Cole, and I had been on the vessel of many tongues for almost a year, the only human among hundreds of travelers from a dozen worlds. Most of them were curious about me. Some were friendly. Tragar was neither. He was Voskai, a species built like walking armor, with thick gray plates covering his arms and chest, and a laugh that could rattle a room. I had gone to the sparring deck that evening just to train, the way I did most nights, throwing punches at the heavy bag, keeping my feet light, my breathing steady. I was not there to prove anything to anyone, but Tragar had other plans. He had been watching me for a while from across the deck, arms crossed, a smile growing on his face. When I paused to catch my breath, he walked over, and that was when the trouble started. "Is this what humans call fighting?" he said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You hop around like insects. You wave your little arms. My younger siblings hit harder than that, and they still have baby teeth." A few of the other beings on the deck turned to watch. I said nothing. I picked up my water bottle and started to walk away, but Tragar stepped in front of me, blocking my path. He was almost 2 feet taller than me, and his shadow covered half my body. "Where are you going, little human? Are you afraid?" he asked, tapping his chest plate with pride. "Show everyone your dance. Hit me. I want to see this human fighting style everyone talks about." The deck grew quieter. More people gathered, drawn by the tension in the air. I felt my heart begin to race, not from fear, but from the simple fact that I did not want trouble. I had worked hard to build a peaceful life here, to be respected without needing to prove strength. But Tragar was not going to let this go. He grabbed my shoulder, not gently, and turned me to face him. "Come on," he said, grinning wider. "Let the whole ship see what a human punch looks like." I looked around. There was Mira, a young Relishi engineer who often waved to me in the hallways, standing near the wall with worried eyes. There was old Benny, a human trader who had been on this ship longer than anyone, watching quietly from a bench, his face calm but alert. Nobody moved to stop what was happening. On this ship, a challenge accepted in front of witnesses was treated as law, something no one could interrupt once it had begun. I took a breath, feeling the weight of every eye on me. My coach back home used to say something simple, something I never forgot. Real strength is not about being loud. It is about knowing exactly what you are doing when the moment comes. I set my feet apart, the way I had done 1,000 times before, and let my body remember the discipline drilled into me since I was young. I was not thinking about winning or losing anymore. I was thinking about balance, about breathing, about turning my whole body into a single line of motion, aimed at one small point. Tragar squared up in front of me, still smiling, still confident, his plated arms loose at his sides like he expected nothing more than a light tap. He had no idea what pressure builds when a human learns to move correctly. When years of practice turn a simple motion into something powerful enough to travel through solid ground and end at a single point of impact. The room fell completely silent. Even the ship's low hum of machinery seemed to fade into the background. I felt the floor beneath my feet, cool and steady. I turned my hip first, then my shoulder, letting the motion build from the ground upward, exactly the way I had learned as a teenager, in a small gym back on Earth, where nobody had special plates or claws, just years of patience and effort. My fist met his jaw before he even finished blinking. For one long second, nothing happened. Tragar stood frozen, his eyes wide with something between shock and confusion. Then his knees buckled, and he dropped to the floor, his plate striking the metal deck with a loud clang that echoed through the room. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mira covered her mouth with both hands. Old Benny slowly stood up from his bench, a small, proud smile crossing his face, though he tried to hide it. I stood there for a moment, flexing my hand, feeling the sting spread across my knuckles. I had not expected that reaction either. I had trained hard, yes, but I never imagined a single punch could put someone that size on the ground so completely. Within minutes, medical staff arrived, moving quickly through the crowd with a floating stretcher. Dr. Priya Anand, the ship's chief medical officer, knelt beside Tragar, running a small scanning device over his head and chest. Her eyebrows rose as she studied the readings, glancing up at me with obvious confusion. What did you hit him with? She asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. This level of impact does not match anything in our records for an unarmed strike. Just my hand, I said honestly, nothing else. She looked at the scanner again, then back at Tregar, who was beginning to stir weakly on the stretcher, his jaw already swelling beneath his gray plates. The crowd around us began to whisper, some in disbelief, others already recording the scene on their handheld devices. As the medical team lifted Tregar and carried him away, the noise on the deck slowly returned, voices rising in excited conversation. Word was already spreading through the ship's communication channels, moving faster than I could have imagined. By the next morning, nearly everyone on board had seen some version of the moment, replayed again and again from different angles. I did not feel proud about it. If anything, I felt uneasy, unsure how people would treat me now. Would they see me as dangerous? Would they avoid me, the way some avoided predators larger than themselves? I walked through the hallways carefully that next day, expecting stares, expecting whispers, expecting trouble. Instead, something different happened. Strangers nodded at me with quiet respect. A group of young Voskai stopped me near the dining hall, not with anger, but with curiosity, asking questions about how humans trained their bodies, how such a small frame could generate that much force. I explained as best as I could that humans were not naturally strong compared to many species on this ship. We had no claws, no armor, no special abilities. What we had instead was time, patience, and generations of learning how to move efficiently, how to turn ordinary motion into something precise and powerful. 3 days later, Tregar found me again on the sparring deck. His jaw was wrapped in a supportive brace, and his usual loud laughter was gone, replaced by something quieter, more thoughtful. I expected anger. Instead, he simply sat down across from me on a nearby bench, tapping the metal surface twice with his hand, a gesture I later learned was a sign of respect among his people. He did not apologize in words, since his culture rarely used apologies the way humans did, but his posture said enough. He gestured toward the training mat, silently asking me to show him how I stood, how I moved, how a single motion could carry so much force. I agreed, and for the next hour, I walked him through the basics. How to plant the feet firmly, how to turn the hip before the shoulder, how every part of the body needed to move together, rather than relying only on size or strength. He listened carefully, adjusting his stance again and again, sometimes stumbling, sometimes surprising me with how quickly he learned. Other beings began gathering around the mat as word spread that the human who had knocked out Tregar was now teaching him. Mira watched from the side with a wide smile, occasionally whispering comments to old Benny, who chuckled quietly, clearly enjoying the entire situation. By the end of the session, Tregar was breathing heavily, sweat forming along the edges of his plates, but there was a new kind of energy in his eyes, something closer to curiosity than pride. He thanked me in his own way, a simple nod of the head, before walking off toward the medical bay for a follow-up check on his jaw. Over the following weeks, our small training sessions became a regular event on the ship. Word continued to spread, and more travelers from different species started showing interest, curious about human discipline, about the idea that strength could come from patience rather than size. I found myself teaching basic stances to Relishi engineers, explaining balance to young Voskai recruits, even showing a group of quiet reptilian traders how proper footwork could prevent injury during accidental collisions in low-gravity sections of the ship. It was strange, thinking back to that first night, how a simple challenge on the sparring deck had turned into something bigger than a single moment of tension. What began as an insult aimed at humans became an unexpected bridge between different worlds, built not through force, but through shared curiosity and mutual respect. Old Benny found me one evening near the observation deck, staring out at the stars streaming past the windows. He leaned against the railing beside me, his weathered face calm under the soft lighting. "You handled that well," he said quietly. "Better than most would have." "I didn't want any trouble," I replied honestly. "I just wanted to train in peace." He nodded slowly, understanding written across his expression. "Sometimes peace finds its way through unexpected doors," he said. "You didn't ask for that moment, but you made something good out of it anyway." I thought about his words for a long time after that conversation, watching the stars drift silently outside the window. I had come to this ship looking for a quiet place to live, to work, to train, without drawing attention to myself. Instead, I had become something unexpected, a bridge between different worlds, simply because I had refused to back down from a challenge I never wanted in the first place. Traeger and I never became close friends in the traditional sense, but something had shifted between us, a quiet understanding, built on respect rather than fear. Whenever we passed each other in the hallways, he would offer a small nod, and I would return it, both of us remembering that single moment on the sparring deck that had changed how an entire ship saw humanity. It was never about proving that humans were stronger than anyone else. It was about showing that strength came in many different forms, and that sometimes, the quietest person in the room carried more power than anyone realized, waiting patiently for the right moment to show it.